So with taking all the groups that we've been taking over the last 20 years to Cuba, it was very interesting to see how the Cubans are teaching what they've developed, what they've created, and many people think that Cuban music is just one music. Well, it's definitely not. Cuba is like a musical continent, and it's really interesting to see people's reaction to that. That's that kind of presentation where there are different influences and different non-connected musics. You know, some people say it's Afro-Cuban. Well, it's not all Afro-Cuban. Some of it is Cuban, Afro-Cuban, and some of it comes from Europe. So, and some of it is just definitely not Afro-Cuban, but it's developed in Cuba, like the son, cha-cha-cha, for example, is not
Yeah.
a Cuban. It's not Afro-Cuban, I should say. So, I mean, that's another world that, and I do that when I do clinics and workshops, specifically on this, just to kind of demystify that. And most people understand it improperly, and it's not their fault. It's just the people who created it can play it. They invented it, but they're not always really good at explaining it. Certainly not the way we understand. So, that's just life, and you have to take the time to figure that out. But then eventually I said, people are asking the wrong questions, and they're not getting the right answers, just because there's not a real understanding of the subject matter, really. And it's really nobody's fault. So I tried to correct that with the book, meaning that I tried to go as deep as I could with the knowledge of develop what you need to know, what you should know, the basic. And the clave is a much bigger subject than anybody ever wants to
Yeah.
address.
Yeah.
But and that's really interesting. And I mean we can go on for days about that, but it's not about that. One day we will.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
also,
interesting, and I'm so happy to have had that opportunity. So the book is there, and I'm glad, and I can explain it. I can till I'm blue in the face, and it's
yeah,
nice to
that's
have the.
great. I need to get that, especially from somebody who is there all the time. I was in Cuba before, but not as many times as you have. And one thing that I learned, I'm going to pick up the book because you have both sides, views from the both sides. One thing throughout the years, with all my career as a drum set guy, I also learned that there is a vernacular here in the US. Sometimes when people label some stuff here, doesn't necessarily match the things that they call in Cuba. I give two examples of that. One is, once in a while you see somebody teaching, conga de comparsa on a drum set, for instance. When I was in
Yes.
Cuba, I saw a couple of group of people playing carnival music, like, 20, 30 people playing. I said, what is this? It was conga, one type of conga. And the guy explained that there was three styles. And the amount of parts that was going on with that, like, it was a tremendous amount of percussion. Like, so which one do you gonna pick? There is no exact, although in academia you might say, when you play a conga, you might playing some elements of that, but it's impossible because it's like so many parts.
Yes.
So this is a way of me realizing that what they call in here might not be exact what they call there. One time I was on this very fancy hotel, and it's actually a resort. I was just there for the Colorado Music Educators Convention. It's called the Broadmoor Resort. It's a 5-star president stays. It's unbelievable. But I was playing a gig at one of the fancy restaurants there, and the singer looked at me, and she said, she asked for a rumba. She said the next song is a rumba. Now, I'm old enough to know that's not what they want. I was not about to break up a rumba because I know exactly what they want. They want what they call a begin groove, which is almost like a bolero groove. Ding,
Exactly.
brak,
Yeah.
ding, ding, ding. But
Yes.
that was funny. If I really gave them a Roomba, probably I'll be fired right away, right?
Oh, you
So
wouldn't last five
so
seconds.
yeah, you gotta figure out what they really mean,
Yes.
or anyway. But that's a whole other
Oh, that
topic.
and that's a really interesting story, Enrique, because most people don't know, and you don't want to offend anybody, because it would just be. I mean, you'd have to spend days trying to make people understand. Don't forget that in the '50s, that whole mambo thing, really in the States came with. what was his name from Dizzy Arnaz, right?
Hmm.
And he was not a musician; he was an actor, a beautiful man, knew how to play some drums, and he came from Oriente, which had nothing to do with rumba, had nothing to
Yeah.
do with cha cha cha, nothing. He was from Oriente, and their specialty there is the conga.
Hmm.
The conga comparsa, there's the conga francesa, there's all of that. So, and they play with a drum slung over their shoulder half the time, and
Hmm.
all of these other drums. And it's very close, and this will mean a lot to you. It's very close to the Brazilian idea
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
of the scola,
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
300 drummers, and it's
right.
exactly the same thing. In fact, it has exactly the same roots,
That's right.
coming from Africa.
That's
The
right.
same, what people don't understand is sometimes in Africa you have areas in music that went to one place and areas in music that went to another. And the whole thing of people on stilts, that's not rumba. you know,
Yeah, yeah.
that's I,
After a while, I think it really becomes for you to be successful with playing Brazilian music. In my opinion, at least for me, what worked for me was I start to listen and play a lot with the people because when I was at
yeah,
Berkeley, I had Sheila E visit me, and she went to one of my classes. One of my classes Afro-Cuban music, and she plays that stuff better than a lot of people. And she really didn't know all the names. She doesn't because she grew up in the middle of it.
that's right.
And when I was with Hilton Ruiz, Dave Valentin, Victor Mendonça, nobody start labeling anything. We just played. I knew what to play, but there was not a
Right.
disconnect between the academia world and the real gigs. And also, I have met people who wrote books and know all the labels and everything, but they don't know how to put the right thing in the right place.
Yes.
So,
Well, that
so
happens a lot, and that's most of them didn't have a chance to go to Cuba and see for themselves how
yeah,
things work. And I think you really have to go there. I've been going for over 20 years, and
yeah,
I,
that's deep.
and then you start understanding. Not that when I'm with someone like Changuito or Piloto, I would
Yeah,
never really compare myself to those people. That's way too deep and too ingrained, but you certainly have a much better understanding of when you're doing something, why it fits, where it comes from. And I
yeah,
studied ethnomusicology as graduate
yeah,
studies, so
yeah,
I've always been really interested in how certain cultures work with another, how they mix, how they superimpose, what their relationship
yeah.
is, and to me that's super interesting.
Yeah, and playing, a lot of a lot of what I did was playing. When I was playing with Victor Mendonça, the conga player was Giovanni Hidalgo. I mean, playing gigs with Giovanni, although it was not a lesson uh, as we take at Berkeley, a private lesson, but I started to understand how you were thinking. It's a different understanding
Sure.
on the bandstand and how he thinks. I learned the whole thing of thinking melodic. He was doing a lot of melodies,
Yes. Well,
which
it's all
brings
it's
me
it's
to
all
the
about
point of,
melody, right?
yeah, it's like it's one thing for you to have experience and try to share that experience through a book. Well, I had a discussion with somebody a couple of years ago. This guy was just like talking bad about books, and I was trying to tell books is just a collection of ideas that somebody put in there. So like a lot of my books, all my books, they didn't come about, I'm going to write a book. They always come about a necessity. Like my very first semester at Berkeley, I had to teach a lot of people at once. Like I was not, it was kind of intimidating for a second because was the amount of students was over 1,000 students on the percussion department at the time. Now it's about 750. So the percussion department at Berkeley is bigger than a lot of colleges, music
That's
colleges, right?
right. Yes,
So
yes.
I got tired of being in the morning on the break room with all the professors trying to, copy handouts and be stressed out. The machine breaks. So after like a few semesters of that, I said, you know what? You start working on your workbooks, whatever you give in the beginning of the semester. You don't need to be doing handouts. Also, another great reason for my every class that I designed had a book was not just to write a book, was like, let's say you're taking a class and week 6, you say, hey, Henrique, I'm going to be in New York. I have a gig. I'm going to miss that week. What's going to go down? Look at the lesson plan, look at the book. We're going to, you know what's coming. It helps everybody. And also it's like, it's well tested. I was part of the educational committee at Berklee, not only design courses. I was one of the guys that approve or disapprove courses that other professors apply or help guide them to the process of doing that. And my questions to people was like, okay, let's say you have a guitar guy or whatever. You're doing a course, and then say, did you ever taught that course before? No. Did you ever did a clinic on that before? No. Did you ever did a master class on that? No. Did you ever do a week intensive on that? No. I said, go out, do 20, 30 clinics, then do a master class, because you gotta take the kinks out, right? You gotta take, and then after a while, you kind of know what works, what doesn't work. Because I think one of the biggest difference between a Berklee professor and everybody else is the amount of students and the feedback. Because you can go and give a clinic and you broadcast information and you go to the next town, right?
Right.
But it's different for you to teach something and then next week they give you feedback and then you teach it again the next week. So you kind of really get better. It's a dance, right? You start to get better at what's working, what's not working. And also you start to develop an understanding. Like every course that I design, I already know what's the week that everybody's going to have most problems. What is the week that's easier? Because you did that so many times, right. But yeah, that's an interesting topic about books, because now, it's like you have a lot of books and a lot of people teaching, so.
Yeah. I even before as a student, I think I own every single book that has ever come out. I would just eat them up, and I think it really helped because it gives you ideas and approaches, methodologies, stuff
Absolutely.
you'd never even
Yeah.
think of. That working with the Elliot Fine book, for example, and then do
Yeah,
Chapin, and
yeah.
then Delecluze, and then vibraphone studies, or timpani study. Then what the approach to each of these areas are, and it just
Yeah.
expands your world.
I have a vast collection. I have on the other room a library of probably thousands of books. Hey, when I was with Alan Dawson, I was with Alan from 88 to 95. He told me that Tony worked on that Elliot Fine book.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
You're talking about the coordination book?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went and bought it.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. He said Tony went to do that stuff.
wow.
Tony Williams. Tony Williams.
Yeah. Of course. No. And that explains a lot. I mean, Tony was crazy. I knew he practiced. I never met Tony Williams, but it's a funny story. When my timpani teacher, when I first started studying timpani, the timpanist at the National Arts Center Orchestra, he knew I was a drum set player, and he
Yeah.
says, "Here, listen to this. Take this home." And he gave me Tony Williams' Lifetime, the Black album, and I
Yeah.
had never heard anything like this. Right, so I go home and I think I had a meltdown because I just couldn't figure out. You know the one, right?
Yeah.
And so I come back the next week. I give him back the album. He says, "So what'd you think?" He says, and I said, "Wow, I can't believe. I mean, how fast, and it's a great album. I couldn't understand half of it." But I said, Tony does some great overdubs and this cymbal playing and all of these other things, and he starts laughing. He says, "No, that's not overdubs."
When I met Alan, I kind of insulted. He didn't like what I said. I insulted I made two teachers very mad because I was going to Berklee full time, and I was going to Gary Shafee's house and Alan's house because by the time I
Wow.
got there, they're both teaching from their homes, right?
Right.
So from 88 to 95, I started with Alan, and then from 88 to fall 19, on and off with Gary, right? So I go to Alan's house, and I said, "Show me everything you showed Tony Williams." He didn't like I said.
Funny.
He was very classy. I have the cassettes of those lessons, and he was very nice to me. He was just talking about being myself, whatever. But I stayed, and that's the same thing I told Gary asked, "Why you here?" I said, "Show me whatever you showed to Vinny. Showed it to me." He did the same thing. He cussed at me. So F players, you need to be yourself. But I stayed. I
Yeah,
stayed.
yeah, yeah.
But I
But
used to see Tony a lot, and Steve Smith and Vinny while I was studying with both of them, and
right.
and Gary Shafee and Alan Dawson show me the material, but watching in the 90s Tony live many times and Vinny and Steve Smith, because that's the connection of the Berklee and the teachers. Those guys, without formally showing me, just watching them use the material gave me a lot of perspective.
Yes.
Of
Wow.
course, they using other stuff too, but it's very interesting to see more advanced players using the materials, in a way that's musical.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, of course. And I have to ask you a question. You mentioned earlier that,
Yeah,
that your first teacher wanted you to be playing on a practice pad for 1 year. I mean, that's the old school, and a lot of them used to do that.
yeah.
What is your thoughts on that?
I think that at my age, and I think we might be closing age. I don't know, but I was born in '65. So if you look at the academic tradition of our instrument, or my instrument, the drum set, right? If you are trying to play drums on the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, here's your options, right? You go to a military rudimental teacher, or you go to an orchestral teacher.
Right.
And they're not going to teach you drums and styles. What they're going to do is they're going to trying to help you understand how to manipulate the sticks, right? It's going to be either from the rudimental aspects or the orchestral aspects, but they're going to teach you the techniques. And then you have the earlier teachers, right? You have, Moeller, Burnsmore, and the likes, right?
Ed
George Lawrence
Reed and
Stone,
Stone. Yeah.
those guys. The second generation of that, you got Spivak, Jim Shaping, you got who else is on that? Joey Morello.
Yeah.
That's like second, third generation. After those guys, you got Alan Dawson, Gary Shafee, Freddie Gruber, uh, Ed Sof, right? And then it's us, right? So we're kind of the not, I think it started on the 80s and 90s, 2000s, all the new generation, and I can say that without a heavy heart because of I have literally taught thousands of students and thousands of lessons, not hundreds. And what's happening now for the last 20 years or 30 years, that new generation is skipping the pad and the snare and the hand technique. And the majority, not all of them, but the majority of them start by playing songs. They playing songs, and they have the YouTube. They have a lot of information coming at
Sure.
them.
Yeah.
I have two boys, a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. When we recording this is what spring 2024. They both, my 12-year-old plays piano, saxophone a little bit, drums, and my 15-year-old plays drums and bass, and they both goes to my school. And they, although they're my sons, both of them, they don't like the pad and rudiments. I mean, they do it, but what they really like doing it is they go to the drum set, they put the iPad. I keep mentioning Dave Garibaldi a lot because he was actually helping me change my curriculum a little bit, because those kids, man, not, we can learn from them too, because the amount of information they are learning just by listening. Like my 15-year-old was playing a couple of weeks ago, Brunsmore, Fly as Me, whatever. That's a hard song. And I said, how are you learning this? Because there's no charts, right?
Right. Right.
Well, he's listened to all the bass drum parts first. He doesn't go to the drums. And then he listens to the hi-hat, and then he listens to the other parts, and he listens to the bass, and then he goes play. So it's all like, they're skipping the reading and the technique. So what I'm trying to help them, and that's what I think about the pad, is back on the day when I look down at that approach, by the time I actually started playing on the drum set, my hands were working, my feet were working. I was holding the stick correctly. I could get a good sound, more consistent. And now it's the opposite. I see my young students, they play, and I say, hey, if you relax a little bit your hand, because you play all wrists, let's talk about,
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like waiting for them to need it, and then if you
Okay.
show them why, they are a little more open to understand why you're not squeezing the heck out of the stick,
Right.
or why you can't play that fast swing is because you're using all your arms, and there is, so I really try to convince them that's a good idea to do the pad and to do reading. And so we are on a brand new year, 2024, the Drum Set Coach Academy. And thanks again, I keep saying his name a lot, David Garibaldi. He gave me great ideas on how to switch things a little bit where, okay, what do we need to really keep it, right? History, we need to know the history,
Yep.
theory, the technique. But then when it comes to the application, there is some prerequisites on each level, but they are allowed to bring songs that they like if those songs fits the need of that level, and that gets them excited. Does it make sense? Instead of saying you're gonna play this and this and this and this and
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
we're gonna work on coordination, technique, all that stuff, and then here's the songs that I'm proposing. Let's say, I don't know, this semester you got to do a little Brazilian or Afro-Cuban or whatever, or funk, whatever it is on that level. They can bring. So I'm getting students now bringing songs, and I take a look at it and I say, we can take this one, go find another one in triplets or whatever it is. Let's say we work on shuffles, so it's a give and take. But in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think that starting on the pad and getting also the snare drum is gonna, on the long run, really help them. Really help them.
Yeah, especially getting away from the big sound of the drums, which gets actually in the way in the beginning.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
also chart reading.
Yeah.
When I was at Berklee, if you ask what is the problem number one with young players, the number one problem, in my opinion, is chart reading. Because we both came from I used to be, my job doesn't exist. I used to be a session musician. I did the stuff for HBO, television, radio. I don't know. It's like this drum set behind me is set up the same way for 30 years. I got a double pedal in there. I got some cowbells in there. I have two bass drums. It's not set up, one on the side. I don't know if it's going to be jazz, rock, funk. Ooh, I had to be ready. You show up. They talk to you for a few minutes. You got to read. Or if you go to a dance, remember that dance band, like a top 40 band.
Oh yes.
You show up there and they have the book. They throw you the book and you're going to just, just no rehearsal.
That's right.
I remember playing for stuff like in Massachusetts, in Boston, we called GB gig, general business. Is that whatever? Is the it paid a lot. Like
course.
$400, $500. What is this? It's Bank of America award ceremony. So here's the book, and you go, and this prize goes for Aldo Massa from New York. That's it. It's like 5 measures that
Right.
you have to read, and now it's like. Back then, unless it was a rock and roll band, I was reading a lot. You go to Riot's Club, playing fusion music,
Sure.
playing with all those great fusion cats. You show up on the club and you read like you not read. I just to reminisce on this time. I saw Vinny Colaiuta one time. He flew to Boston to play at Riot's with this amazing fusion pianist. He's from the Middle East. What's his name? Isaac somebody, Arvin. They did a trio. Amazing fusion pianist that wrote, really complicated music. And I think he played the drums of a great drummer, Marty Riches. He used to be Gary Burton's drummer. So I met Rios watching the sound check. Man, I have a cassette of this. Somebody put on YouTube. I was on that gig at Rios.
Okay.
Aydin Azing, I think his name. Aydin. Anyway, remind me to send this music because you can't believe what he was late. Vinny was late coming in from Los Angeles. He sits there. They put the cymbals and the rehearsal. Those charts was unbelievable, like odd
Wow.
meters. Like stuff that's and then he's soloing over vamps, like and he's just like destroying, man. And I was like, okay, I gotta get my reading together.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
more you did it, better you got. When I
Oh,
joined the Air Force Academy band,
yeah.
it's like a company. They say, okay, this week you're gonna build the concert band. This week you're gonna go out with a rock band. This week you're on a country band. Tomorrow you're gonna do a big band fest. You don't know. It's like at the time I complained a lot because you become this kind of a blue collar worker. Oh, now it's a marching band tomorrow. So, but after I did that for 13 years, man, you know what? Now you can say I can say this without a heavy heart. There is not a lot of gigs that I can't play, because
Right.
you just play everything. And when I was at Berklee, my very first week at Berklee, Terry Lynn Carrington used to come to my office because my office was amazing because I had like a microwave, a coffee maker, a state of the art copy machine. I was in the military. My stuff was together. And she's one of my heroes, right?
Right,
So I
right.
always giggle when she was there. And then one day she said, hey, I recommend you to Gloria. I have people going to call you. That's Gloria Stefan, right? So I did a good job with that. That's pop, Latin pop, right? I did a good job with that. I was recommended to Victor Wooten. I did a good job with that. I was recommended to Dave Ellefson. That's heavy metal. I did a good job with that. I was
Sure.
I was doing like one night was acoustic trio, heavy metal with double bass, pop, everything, and that came from just like sort of playing, like being a like what do you call on the workforce,
Yep, yep. All
and
around great, all around, and you play a lot, and that's important. Yeah.
what are your thoughts about this? I always tell my students I shouldn't divide, but I divide in two ways because people always ask how you make a living as a drummer, right? So I have publishing going on, a brick and mortar school, an online school, very successful. I'm not a materialistic guy, but 2 years ago, this the house market's crazy. About a $500,000 house, which with drumming, it's like with this. How you do that? I tell them there is the art of drumming, which I love it. That's why every morning I'm on that, right? And in my opinion, there is the workforce. Okay, if you want to be the guy that your bass drum is a water bottle and your hi hat is a gong, and your cymbal is a shaker, that's fine. But that's not gonna work everywhere. Okay, if you want to do that, go ahead. If you want to be on the workforce, it becomes like, are you able to provide a service to somebody? Like most of my living was made by being a sideman. Like people hire me to a recording session. Nobody would say, "I'm so glad you're here. We hire you to ask you what do you think about our music." Nobody asked me that, or nobody said we are here so you can express yourself any way you want. I have my band. I do that with my band, but I work in that. This is the songs. Can you do this? Can you do that? And I provide a service, and I
Yep.
got a check, right? And that's a little different, right? Because if you want to do that, more skills you have, like yourself. I mean, you have so many hats that you wear, right?
Exactly.
You did the repercussion, teaching, you play so many instruments. So you have a large menu of services to the
Sure.
music society that they can hire you, right? So
Yeah.
if you go, okay, I'm gonna be a heavy metal drummer or a jazz drummer. So how you feel about what this
Well,
is
no,
I
that's
do both, but not necessarily is the other. Does it make sense?
absolutely, and that's a really good question, and a lot of people struggle with that. For me, The way it happened with me was I was a rock drummer, and I just played in bands when I was growing up, and I really enjoyed it. And then I got to a point where I started getting interested in percussion, and so I was studying a little bit and listening to jazz, and I was seeking where to go with that. And then I went to a drum camp, and I met Joe Morello. I met uh, um, Gary Burton. I mean, Gary Burton was my first vibe teacher, by the way.
Not a shabby way to start.
But it was at the camp, and I was total novice. But
Who
these
do
were
you
all
go
my,
after that? Who do you go after that, Trent?
well, that's a great way to start, right? Great way to start. So I said, for me, when you're studying and you get serious about this, you go with the top people you can afford anywhere, go across the planet and do it. So you make one of two decisions. You say, okay, I just want to be the best jazz drummer on the planet. I don't care who's there. I want to be way beyond. Okay, go deep in that, but no, that's a one-way street, and you better be really good, and you create one style.
and lucky.
And yes, of course, there's all the above. But there's the other side, depending on your interest. I started getting all of these interests, so I started learning mallets. I mean, Gary Burton was the person who showed me how to hold four mallets. Showed me, and then I had to learn to play the instrument. And then Joe Morello trading fours. For me, we traded cards. We didn't trade fours. So I had no idea about all of this because I came from a different background. But I was so curious, then I just went crazy for it. And I tell everybody, if you're interested in being a player, and if you're not interested in just bringing and making music with people, then you're in the wrong place. You either create yourself, you be a Buddy Rich, who's that person with that one thing and did very well. That's one way to go. But what I was interested in is I wanted to do everything. So I did. And I studied with all the best people when I was in Montreal. I was doing a lot of club gigs, a lot of that, but I was studying classical music. And I ended up having a double major in jazz that they weren't even offering yet. I was playing in three big bands and taking all the extras I could. I'd fly down to New York every month, taking lessons, and all my money went into that. Because I said I wanted to be a studio musician. To be a studio musician was to be able to play all the styles, being able to read.
That's right.
So I studied like everything, and I was doing. People would call me to play for musicals. I was playing more musicals than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah.
So I was like. I was like three different people, and then consequently, I would be recommended for different things. One day, my teacher comes in and says, Aldo, you're the only one who can do this. I can't do this, but I need you to take this gig. It's this summer. Are you busy? I said, no, I'm not busy. Of course I was busy. They used to call me Mr. Sub because I used to have like 5 gigs, and then I would go to camps. I would go to all these places to study, and everybody else was working. I was studying, but they were my gigs, and I'd come back and I'd continue. And, I would do, for example, a Canadian tour of the Broadway production of Fiddler on the Roof with the original cast, with Anton Coppola, the uncle of Francis
amazing.
Ford, as conductor for 2 months.
Does that ever connect it to you? Because on the beginning, I thought about, everything was disconnected. But as I get older, different topics of music, different areas of I give you an example. When I was in New Orleans playing with Bill Summers, he's the co-founder of the Headhunter. He had a bata ensemble. I never played bata, but I studied jazz, a lot of triplets. I started with Alan, and my polyrhythm knowledge with Gary Shafee, who studied South Indian music. So I didn't know the language of bata drums, but I was not starting from zero, right? Because I was like, oh man, the triplets and how it.
Of course.
And also, like, as I get older, I go like, wow, when you play West African 6/8 stuff, kind of relate to the Wilcoxon, 6/8 march, kind of relate to jazz, swing, shuffles, Afro-Cuban 6/8. Hip hop, you see all those connections.
Yeah.
And with the experience, you start to blend these. It becomes one thing.
One
You just,
universe.
it's
Yeah.
like speaking a language, but now, no, I never spoke a lot of language. I speak Portuguese, English, a little. I understand a little bit of Italian, but I had a friend of mine at Berkeley who, in Portuguese, we call polyglot. He spoke many languages,
Okay.
many, like 5 or 6 languages. And he was telling me something, I never forget this. Because I'll be on a cafe with him in front of Berkeley, and a guy from Israel walk in, he talks to them. And then a guy from German, he talks to them, a Brazilian, on their languages, right?
Right.
And he told me when he speaks, of course, the common language is English at Berkeley when I was a student and a teacher later. But he said when you speak with someone on their native language, you're able to get a lot out of that person history and
Yeah.
character. It's like when I moved to the US, most of my life as a student was in Boston, right? So after I graduated, I went to Mississippi, New Orleans, and then I traveled all over the country. So now when I hear somebody, the southern accent or a northern accent or a Chicago accent or Arkansas accent, you can tell a little bit about that person as opposed to you from Italy, I'm from Brazil, we speak in English, but if I spoke Italian, maybe I can figure out the region that you're from. If you speak Portuguese, you go like, oh, this guy's from the Northeast area. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So with music styles, I think the conversation when you're in the bandstand is a little deeper, especially if you're playing with people that are coming from the same place that you're coming from. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
No, you make a great point. I speak 4 languages fluent: read, write,
Wow.
and English, French, Italian, and Spanish. And I tried Mandarin and not unsuccessfully. My wife is Hungarian. I tried Hungarian. Those are really difficult, but I haven't given up. I'm learning. But the thing is, yeah, when you said about the music all connects, absolutely it does. Because when you really think about it, in music, melodically, there are 7 notes. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Rhythmically, the clave. And everything is a variation of the clave.
Right.
Okay? Now, that we can go on for days about that. But once you understand how they relate to one to the other, I mean, you have the Western classical music, then you have the classical Indian, North and South Indian music, and those are completely different paradigms. And then you have everything that's a derivative of Africa, melodically and rhythmically. But at the end of the day, it's all melody, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
then
funny.
whether you're playing timpani, snare drum set, jazz,
Yeah.
it's just context.
Yeah, it's funny you
me.
said that because playing orchestral music for 13 years and coming from Brazil, which is a groove culture, my degrees in jazz composition, all my courses I write a lot for drums. So in early January, it was in December. I was invited as a guest to play the Best of the West festival at Mesa University, and they just wanted me to be just the drums. So I played several concerts in different venues, just the drums, right? 500 people. The other one was a bigger theater. I videotape everything. But I was very comfortable because I'm glad I did my orchestral work because I look at the drums, hey man, I have a little bit of orchestra in here. So it's a different way of thinking as opposed to making beats.
Exactly, yeah. Because
And
it's all melody, yeah.
yeah, I think that a guy like you that you got the Latin stuff going, orchestral, your repercussion experience with it starts to it's almost like you backing out those little videos that they go from a
Yes.
corner and they go up and now it's the planet Earth and now it's the galaxy and you can get a perspective that is like, oh man, this is all music. It's all music, and I think gives a wider lenses.
It's huge, and then add to that the fact that music itself, especially rhythm, is really the universal language. So let's say you're traveling, and this happens to me because I would go to China every year, all the time, working there with the organizations there. I would be in a in a theater, and there's a traditional Chinese ensemble doing some mega production. And then at one point near the end, the person, imagine this, the person comes up and says, we have a special guest in the audience. They're all speaking Mandarin. So I'm not understanding anything except when I hear my name.
Right.
So
Right.
somebody beside me says, they're calling you up, go and play, sit
Right.
in this concert, like there may be 1,000 people. And I've never met these people. They're brilliant, traditional Chinese with the drums and all stuff. But Enrique, it's rhythm. It's universal language. It doesn't matter. We
Yeah.
played.
My
And
big problem
amazing.
when I was younger is I always learned I knew music was a language, but when I was playing, I was not really focused like I am now that I'm older. I'm focused on the language and how I communicate my ideas because I didn't
Yes.
have the clarity of my intentions.
Yeah.
I knew music
Good
was a
word.
language. I had a lot of vocabulary. I had a lot of chops. I had experience. I played all over the world. I have all the, check the boxes. But on a deeper level, I was not really focused on if music is a language, then the question was, what do I want to say? And am I speaking in a way that all people, not just drummers or
Yeah.
musicians or academic, all people, can the people understand my intention to the clarity of my message?
Yep.
And when I start thinking like that, it's really not about the music or the drumming or the rudiments. It's not. It really becomes in a higher level. What's your intention that you want to communicate?
Yeah.
Like if you see Terry Bozzio drum solo, very advanced, my mom is not going to understand that,
Right.
right? But if you go boom bam bam boom bam boom 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 bam bam boom bam 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 boom bam bam boom 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 ba boom bang boom bam bam boom bam boom boom, but my kid knows that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
and I'm not saying for you to play something that you don't mean or you're gonna dumb it down. That's not what I'm saying. But the focus of the communication started to happen, and then lately, I just lost my dad last year, and that really helped me focus even more, not only on the focus of the communication, but my whole band. What is the purpose of my band, and how I start creating a set list. I, 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 I was it was shocking to me. This is just last year,
Okay.
because I had to do a memorial concert for him, right? And I was looking at the set list, and I was like, okay, this is BS. Okay, this is no reason for that to be, because I want every song to have a meaningful message
Exactly.
according to my. It's like cooking, If you're a chef, my mom was a culinary teacher. She retired now, but when you go to a good restaurant right now, and you like the food and you keep going there, it's because your taste is aligned with the chef's taste, because that's what that guy likes, right? I'm not saying that everybody's going to like my band, but the purpose of my band
Sure. Yeah.
nowadays is really to. I had a conversation with Al Jarreau about this before he died. He said, baby, we are in the cardiology business. He said, in the cardiology business. He said, I want people to forget about their bill, their pain, their stress. So I want people to go to my school. I have my own venue at the Drum Set Coach Academy. We have a very small room, stage. It has 30 seats. That's my own jazz club. Right? So when I go in there and I play, I want people to be on a music spa. I want them to just relax. Remember when you're a little kid, you go to a movie, the movie ends, and you're back to reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want the experience to be transformational, and that's like even beyond the intention. But, it's like Terry Lynn Curtis used to talk about that. Articulation. John Patitucci talks about that. It's like, nobody's
Yeah.
understanding, and drummers are at greater risk. Warning, warning, right? Because the
Yes.
drums is easier to not to think about the melodies. And just on this drum set here, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours. My wife can attest to. I have a couple of set of cymbals that is in tune with the drums, right? Because I tune. Boom, baby, boom, boom, baby, boom, 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 and the crashes is actually the same pitch of the
Right.
drums, and if it's out of tune, I can't play because I'm thinking about the music.
Yes.
But
So
anyways,
let me interject there. And when I'm teaching, and when I'm teaching drum set, here,
yeah, yeah,
and somebody's playing, I say, well, don't just hit that cymbal. What do you hear the pitches, the various notes, a million notes that are in that instrument?
that's right.
I said, I don't have perfect pitch. I have a really good relative pitch, but whatever I play, I'm thinking melody. I'm thinking of composition. I'm a message. I'm making a statement.
Yeah,
That's why the clave is so important, because it's the foundation of communication of an idea via um, rhythm and
yeah,
music, and it's not, and it's all melody
yeah,
with time in it, with sequence. So it's always melody, only melody. Even if you play
yeah, yeah,
cymbals.
yeah, yeah.
So
Hey,
here's a
I,
drummer speaking.
I
We're playing melodies.
do you know Ed Blackwell? Ed Blackwell.
Yes,
Go.
yes.
Do you know the song Togo? He recorded with what's his name? The trumpet player. Check this song out. Togo. Togo.
Togo. Okay.
Ed Blackwell. Togo. You're gonna love it. The amount of melodies. He's a drum solo, and also just so people like, what are you talking about? Go check Togo with Ed Blackwell. And also one of my favorite drummers that is like that a lot is Chad Wackerman.
Oh, yes.
He has a lot of compositions for the drums. The way he tuned the drums is just fabulous. It's of
Yep.
course Max Roach, we know all
Oh,
that.
well,
But
listen,
but
speaking of Max Roach, to me, he was the kind of the guy who woke everybody up.
that's
Listen to
right.
any solos of his, and it's like he's speaking, and it's a
That's
conversation
right.
with you, the listener.
That's
And he's
right. That is
making,
right.
and it's all about melody, and whether the drums are pitched, like you could be a maniac, like you're describing yourself, which is great, but it doesn't have to be, because there are pitches there. So using the
Yeah.
pitches that are there, whatever they are, and there's a million in each instrument, and then each cymbal is an instrument, each drum is an instrument. So that combination, that set of the drum set, or that whatever the combination happens to be, you make
Yeah.
melodies out of it,
Yeah,
whatever it is. If
once you
it's
get used to that, it's impossible not to sing melodies. And now I have a problem now. I'm gonna talk to LP because now I feel like my cowbells are not the pitch that I want to be, and that's a little harder to find. I gotta call them. I don't know because they look like the mumble bell. I see one behind you.
yeah,
They might be one very consistent, so I need to find a couple of cowbells that's a little low in pitch to match my stuff.
right, yeah,
And it's like the level of comfort that I have now. Vic First is doing both of my sticks. I have a fusion stick and a lighter stick, and then the sonar has been great to me. I have a custom made kind of a weird setup because it's like 8, 10, 13, 14, 13, 12, and my bass drums now I did 14 or 16 because of my back injury when I was in the military. So it's like everything is very close
okay,
and now is in tune. But the cowbells, that's not an easy instrument to mess around with the tuning. But I gotta reach out to Jewel Thomas, you know her for
yes,
sure,
of
right?
course, of course,
And
yeah,
see if
yeah,
they can help me getting some cowbells and test them out and see what I can do with that. Any
yeah.
recommendations?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'll send you some ideas I have that I've come across in my path. But
Yeah.
I wanted to say, it's we can go on like for days and weeks, Enrique. This is terrible. No, I'm joking. This
Yeah,
is
let me
fantastic.
just tell what, because I remember when we had that little break, I was at Berkeley. So let me tell you what I'm doing now. Do you want to hear that or
Oh,
no?
please, please. I was going
Yeah.
to ask you that before we go to talk about your, the musiccoach.com, your academy.
Yeah, so I got at Berkeley. The first year was kind of very hard because I had a baby. a 4-year-old, and we moved there, and then I'm teaching full time. Go, bow, right? So after a while, like I said, I start doing the books, and kind of it took me like 3 years to kind of master this whole situation because it's a very fast pace. I bought a house in Chelmsford, which is like border with New Hampshire. So my commute on weekdays, if I went on a Sunday, it was 45 minutes, but on weekdays, 2.5 hour commute, right? Yeah, my back hurts just saying it. And then I like to practice. So I was there at 7 in the morning on my studio, and then I practice 7 to 9, and then I teach 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1, lunch break, and then 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, office hour, because in order to justify, the salary, they gave me a lot of administrative work, like advisor for the department. It's a lot. I was out of there by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then drive another hour and a half. The rush hour in Boston is 24 hours rush hour. There is no rush hour. It's forever, right? So, but then what happened was I really sharpened my teaching, right? Because imagine you giving 8 master classes a day for 12 years, right?
Yeah.
Because I would go and teach a double bass fusion class, and then I go teach a Brazilian class, then a Afro-Cuban class. I mean, it's like teaching and private lessons, and I save my rosters on my computer. Is literally like hundreds of students every year, right? So after a while, and then John Ramsey liked my military approach because I'm responsible. I'm not yeah, man, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I'm there early, right? I have 2 black belts in karate. So I was not the regular, artsy type, and everybody start calling me the coach, right? He's called me the Sarge because I was really military.
Well, you're professional. Professional.
That's why the coach came from, because it's a more healthy image. I like karate, I like discipline, I like exercise. Anyway, but he put me in charge of me and Larry Finn. We in charge of a lot of different things for the 5 week. Not in charge of the 5 week, but the drum set things of the 5 week, like the showcase. I was in charge of doing some of the auditions. This is like 120 drummers, cattle call, and then a week later we pick like 12, and then out of those 12 we pick the best jazz drummer, the best rock, for the 5 week. It's the biggest summer camp in the world, right? So after a while, I told him, like, this is later on. So I start writing, I wrote the double bass book, polyrhythm book. I wrote a bunch of stuff, start being published. And then Omar Hakim became the chairman, and they promote me early to full professor. I was associate professor, I went to full professor. But then I start to get burned out, So I went to them and I said, hey, man, I need to take a leave of absence, man. I love the job. It was incredible, but wow, because I did. Can you imagine 12 years, fall, summer, spring, fall, summer, spring, fall, summer, spring. A lot of those drummers, teachers on the summer, they go out on tour, they take a break. I couldn't afford that. I just taught, nonstop. So in 19, I didn't have time to do a sabbatical, the paperwork. So I said, hey, I got to take a day off. I went to the dean, and he said, hey, if you want me to approve this, just to let you know, we can't pay you because, this is it's unpaid leave. I said, that's fine, do it. I need to get out of here for a year. So I lived in Colorado Springs before. It's beautiful. So my wife and I, we rent a place, brought the boys in, and then there is a little city on the mountains, a half hour from here. It's called Palmer Lake. It's a beautiful place in the middle of nowhere. So I rent a little studio to practice and to teach. And then all of a sudden, man, it picks up. It's like student after student after student. I was having a lot of fun. And then guess what? Pandemic hit, right?
Oh, yes, of
2020.
course.
So I went online, and then Berklee calls and say, hey, we want you to be back full time. Can you get out of your leave because of the pandemic? But you're going to be remote. So that was perfect because I was teaching my classes from, it was not this house, the house that I was renting. I was teaching full time in the morning, people from all over the world on Zoom. Zoom was brand new then.
Yes.
And then that was insanity schedule. And then noon, I'll get in my car, drive to my school, and then teach from 1 to 7 or whatever it was, right? So then after the pandemic, they said, hey, if you want to come here, if you want to continue, you got to come here. I said, can I continue as, online? They said no. And then my school, I had another teacher teaching bass guitar. So we had like 100 and some students.
Nice.
And I was like, you know what? This is great. I'm going to stay here because I own this school. Park is free. I park right in front of it. I'm the boss, my wife and I make all the decisions. And I already did so much stuff in my life. I kind of dig it, Colorado Springs. I know a lot of people here, so I extended my leave as much as I could until they go like, "Hey, party's over. You want to come?" So I was contemplating commuting from Denver. So what I was gonna do is such a great salary that it would work. Basically, I was gonna fly from Denver to Boston on a Sunday, teach Monday and Tuesday, fly back and teach at my school for a while. But the new chairman, Yoron, he didn't let me do office hours online. He wants me there Wednesday. So that put a hold. So I resigned last August.
Okay.
And now I run the Drum Set Coach Academy. Is the brick and mortar school. And I run the drumsetcoach.com, and we teach beginner students all the way to people that Mark Walker is on tour right now with Artur Sandoval. He
Great
takes some of
player.
the
Yeah.
classes. Bill Gibson from He Lives in the News. Dave Garibaldi, consultations here and there. I mean, I have a lot of professional guys. And then I have little Johnny, 8 years old, never played drums before. So we have all kinds of stuff. But it's great. It's a challenge to have your own business.
Oh,
We homeschool our kids. So
nice.
they go to a community school on Tuesdays. So it's a lot of work, plus the publishing, and you have to have a lot of
Yeah.
discipline. And we just have a couple of new products, a journal, and of course work with Rob Wallace. We have a couple of new books that just came out. So anyway, it's fun, but it's a lot of work, as you know. But
Yeah.
that's what I do now. I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Beautiful.
And I
Yes.
work from home in the morning, and then in the afternoon, about 11 to or noon. Uh, Not today, of course, because we're here. I go and drive about a half hour, open the school, and I'm there until 8 and come back.
Yeah.
And some days I have to tell myself to be thankful, to be grateful, to pray and be thankful to God of all those gifts. But sometimes it's when you doing it, you don't see that you live in your dream. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Oh, it's a lot of. Well, it's the price to pay for to be where you want to be. It's not always. It doesn't rain. You have to do it, and that's half the fun. If it was just given to you, Enrique, it would be me. It would not have half the meaning. You know.
Yeah.
Then when things go the way what you design is actually working, or you had an impact on people. I mean, I'm the same. Some people would ask me like, "When do you sleep?" Well, I find time to sleep. I mean, you figure it out.
Yeah, we just finished a 4-day convention, right? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the good news is with the family. It's my two boys and my wife and my assistant. And we set up the booth and we put everything, we put the books. You know how it is, a convention booth. And we
Yes.
spent 4 days on this resort. And then we come back Sunday. And then Monday, I'm driving to the school, and I realize a lot of the stuff I need is on my garage, right? So I was calling my son and say, hey, when you come tonight, bring this bass drum, bring the electronic drums, bring this. And then text, it's like I didn't have a little time off. It's like, boom, go.
Yeah.
It's like, this is ridiculous, but, it's fun. I'm lucky. I'm not complaining, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of work.
And I think at some point, when new ideas come to you, just get them out there. I mean, I had the same the same thing. I'm a little bit also. A lot of people don't know this, but a little bit of an inventor. So I've invented like 5 or 6 different things, and the first one
Wow.
first one is coming out. Actually, it was launched at NAM recently, and it's a music stand for mallet instruments. It just sits on the frame of any instrument. And man has it.
Wow.
I licensed it to Manhasset. So it's a Manhasset stand
Amazing.
with the moves with your music of your instrument. Whether it's a vibe or a marimba, it doesn't
I,
matter.
I, I bet that came from a problem, right? That's what I was talking
Of
about.
course.
Our books come from a necessity. I bet you wanted
Yes.
to do that to solve your problem, right?
Of course, and that's it. You always solve your issues, the problems, and some people live with it. And you say, well, it doesn't have to be like that. It's crazy. You move, you're playing in front of a symphony orchestra. Conductor says, Aldo, can you guys move like 3 inches this way? And you're doing a reading right now, so we memorize all the music, but for the rehearsals, it's all out there. So you
Yeah,
have 4 music stands with all the music there. So then you say, well, that's an orchestra break. That's 20 minutes. So you say, oh, that's crazy. Why do we do that? So anyway, all of those ideas, you say, imagine if you just do this, and that takes 5 seconds instead of
yeah,
half an hour. And
yeah,
also, all
yeah,
those music stands look ugly on stage in front of
yeah.
your instruments, and then you have to have a truck just for the music stands,
True.
moving on a stage. So I said, I got to resolve that, and we did. And I
Yeah,
have a bunch of other things that are coming out. Oh
logistics.
yeah,
Like I never run a school. I mean, I've been teaching for 30, 40 years, but I never run a school before. So still on those 4 years, we learning a lot,
yeah,
logistics, right? Like I remember when we opened the school, we got a Yamaha drums everywhere. Greg Crane was really good Yamaha, but the school's not very big. So we had to kind of to replace drums with little drum, with smaller drums, because then you can change, you can grab a 14-inch bass drum, put on the stage, okay, you take it off the stage.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny you said that about the stand, because one thing that was driving me nuts, not only on my studio here, but in my office, you ever been practicing and you need a pencil and the pencil is on the floor? It's like underneath the bass drum, or you never can find your pencil. So I got mad one day and I went upstairs and I got the the disposable coffee mugs
Okay.
and a tape, and I tape on every side of the drums and put a bunch of pencils, like something like this,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
It's the
Well, of
ghetto solution. So everywhere you
course.
go in the school in the drums, there is a paper cup taped with duct tape full of pencils in there.
Nice, nice. Well,
Yeah.
that's the other part of being a drummer percussionist. We're always solving problems, and we're always creative and finding solutions, and that's what we do, right? Find solutions.
That's right.
Writing
That's
books or
right.
creating an academy. I mean, these are solutions to something you want to do. Well, create it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Anyway, I want to thank you so much, Enrique, for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. We'll have to hang out in person. That's
Yeah,
for
you need
sure.
to come and visit. I many times I thought about calling you because we do summer camp here, and I was like, man, I gotta pick your brain because you like the event guru. And I'm serious. Throughout the 4 years I'm here, there's several times where I want to reach out to you to ask questions or ask for counsel, advice on things, because that's your whole life doing that. And just to let you know, I love your show. I
Thank you.
listen to it constantly. I just did something with Bart, the drum history guy. He has a great podcast too. But I love your show. Thanks for doing that. And I want you to please keep doing it because, it helps a lot of people out there, man. And
Yeah.
hopefully you can visit us.
Oh,
Visit us here.
we'll put it on. We'll make it work. That, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah,
And
June is a good time to come. It's summer. Colorado Springs, if you do a little research, is a very outdoor. It's beautiful here.
okay.
There's a lot of stuff to do, and now it's our summer camp. Used to be a 5 week, now it's just 1 week.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, in March, I always go to Cuba, and I spend a lot of time there because we take groups down to Cuba,
Yeah,
and we have performances, and I organize tours for them there.
beautiful, beautiful.
And now we're doing our new project in Italy, Cosa, Italy. So, and
Yeah,
we have a house in southern Italy. So I
yeah.
go often back and forth, and all my students, I teach them online, and sometimes they say, Aldo, last week you didn't have a tan. Well, I'm 300 steps from the beach. So
Yeah, I two places on my bucket list that I want to take my family: Italy and Portugal. So maybe
beautiful.
we can talk offline, see if you can get some connections from me too. I would love. I never been to Italy, and I'd love to go to Italy.
Oh,
Yeah, maybe do a master
be
class
careful
there or
what you
something.
ask
You know.
for, and the food.
Yeah, you know Sergio Bellotti, right? Sergio
Of
Bellotti.
course, yes.
Yeah, I never took advantage of that because he's from Italy and he goes all the time. He used to take Skip Hayden there and a lot of guys. So maybe he knows some schools there, but maybe I'll talk to you about if you know schools that I could go, and I just want to take my family there. And Portugal, of course, because my grandparents from Portugal, and I
Of
speak the
course,
language, and I
yeah.
want to get some of
But
that food.
no, it's good to. I mean, and you're in a position where you can move around and do what you do and love. We love what we do, and we move it whether you're here or there. Now with the technology, also facilitates everything. So
Yeah,
the more we enlarge in our horizons, the better. The world
that's
is a
right.
better place.
That's right. That's right.
So as I always say, to be continued.